Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today we're gonna be doing something different instead of crocheting.
Why?
We're gonna be watching scary videos. Christmas scary videos, and I have my very special guest here, my dad.
Hello.
Shout out him because he makes Iron Root content and workout content.
Thanks, baby.
So let's get started.
It was Christmas Eve, 2001. I was 6 years old at the time. My parents had gone to the store in town to grab some last-minute supplies for Christmas. They'd left me in the barely capable hands of my older brother. I was downstairs in the living room watching some cartoons on TV, while he was upstairs in his room listening to metal. As I'm sitting there, watching Dexter's Lab, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. Passing by my living room window was a guy in a big, floppy red hat. Looked in at me. It was a man dressed up in a cheap Santa suit. He had the big, fake white beard and everything, even a large sack slung over his shoulder. Now, to my childish mind, this really was Santa paying me a visit. Still, even then, I knew something was off. What unsettled me about him as he stared in through the window at me were his eyes. They looked sickly and yellow, with dark bags hanging under them. His cheeks were sunken, and he didn't exactly look like the holly jolly jelly belly Santa I imagined growing up. He looked in at me for an uncomfortably long amount of time, and I looked back. Rather than be filled with joy, I just felt uncomfortable, but being so young, I didn't exactly know how to react. Santa was a good guy, right? While looking in, he motioned towards our front door, as if to say, "Let me in."
Don't open the door. Don't open the door.
I got up off the couch and walked into the hallway. I unlocked the door, but didn't touch the screen door in front of it like my parents had taught me. As such, there was still a thin layer between myself and the Santa now standing on my porch.
Oh, ho, ho. Why, hello there, little boy.
You look like a crackhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. And what's your name?
Michael. I remember feeling confused that he didn't know my name. I always thought Santa knew every kid's name. Wasn't he supposed to have a list?
Oh, nice to meet you, Michael. Do you know who I am?
I nodded yes.
Well, I've heard you've been a very good boy this year, so I brought you this.
He dipped his hands into the sack and pulled out a wrapped present, held it out in front of him as if to say, "Come and get it." Being so young and naive, I was tempted to open the screen door and take the gift, but my parents had drilled stranger danger into me hard, to the point where I didn't even trust Santa Claus. All I could think to do was tell Santa that he had come too early, and that he should come back at nighttime like he was supposed to. Put the present under our tree, you know?
Come now, Michael. Open up and come and get your present. It's a doozy.
The temptation was strong. I wanted the present, obviously. My imagination ran away with me, thinking about which new, cool toy it could be. But I needed permission. I shouted up to my brother, "Daniel, come down here real quick." I'll never forget how that Santa's eyes widened as I shouted that upstairs. Without hesitation, he turned and walked away. He hopped into a van outside our house that still had its engine running. All I could think was, where are the reindeer? Within moments of getting in, he drove off down the road, never to be seen again. Not by me, at least. My brother hadn't even heard me shouting because of the metal he was blasting. When my parents came back, I told them about the Santa that came to visit. They thought I was just pretending or playing a game. A couple of days after Christmas, the news broke out. An 8-year-old boy in our town had disappeared from his house after his parents ran to the stores. They had only left him alone for 10 minutes. They never found him. My folks believed my story after that, and never left me alone with my brother again. I thank my lucky stars we had that screen door rule in my home.
So
Yes, that was creepy. I think he had the right idea not to open the door. He didn't open the glass
but
door.
also that's why you're not allowed to stay here by yourself.
Yeah.
See? Okay, because there's weirdos out here.
Dad, how scary did you think that was 1 to 10?
I like that one. Okay, so from 1 to 10 was a solid 7. That was a solid 7, but it's like watching one of those movies where the person is making all the wrong choices and you're like, come on. You know what I'm saying? So that was a good one. Mm-hmm. What about you?
I think that was a good one as well. He looked creepy. He looked like a crackhead Santa Claus.
Crazy alcoholic or something.
Yeah. I liked it, that one, but I didn't like how he looked.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's the point. He looked creepy. It's just
he looked creepy. It's supposed to be
Freaky
scary.
Friday. Exactly. Let's get into the next one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do it.
On Christmas Eve in 1989, I was traveling through Mexico City in my boyfriend's car. He was driving and I was navigating. There were Christmas decorations up along the streets and most of the traffic was moving at a snail's pace, taking care not to hit the dense pockets of people walking up and down the street. We were in a hurry though, so my boyfriend turned off one of the main roads and we cut down a side street to avoid the congestion. We made a few more turns and suddenly stopped when we realized we didn't have a clue where we were. I opened the map while my boyfriend put the car in park and lit up a cigarette. I was tracing our route on the map to backtrack us when something struck our car hard on the front side right next to me. I caught a glimpse of a figure slam into our windshield and bounce forward off the car. I cried out in shock while my boyfriend stuffed his cigarette in the ashtray and stepped out of the car. This is where the experience became strange. I've never shared this before with anyone other than my closest friends and family who I trust. While my boyfriend was climbing out of the car, I saw the figure who struck us stand up awkwardly, holding his head and limp across the street. My boyfriend completely ignored him and bent down to look at the front of the car. I rolled down my window and called out, "Hey!" to the man as he limped away. My boyfriend, thinking I was yelling at him, called back to me, "Don't get out." I called back, "What? Why?" And my boyfriend stood back up and I noticed blood on his pants from where he had knelt down. "He's dead," my boyfriend said, and he rubbed his face. "What? No, he's not, I turned and started to point in the direction the man had limped away in, but he was gone. I got out of the car and stood up. I saw enough to understand what my boyfriend meant. The man we had struck had flipped off the windshield and caught his head in a storm drain. His neck was very clearly broken and he was bleeding heavily from 2 different compound fractures in his legs where he had struck our car with his bike. The bike itself was lying on its side by my feet, the front wheel bent sideways and the back wheel still spinning. I was in shock and kept jerking my head back and forth down the street the man had limped down on and the figure at my feet. It didn't make sense. They were wearing the exact same clothes. How many people did we hit? I asked my boyfriend. He looked at me like I had hit my head. "Only one," he replied. Then he started waving his arms to flag down a police car. I sat down on the sidewalk and stared at the ground, feeling like I was going to be sick. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't seen a ghost because I had seen the shadow of the man cast on the stone wall behind him as he stood up and limped away. But there he was. The exact same man who had stood up right there on the ground in front of our car. The police blocked off the area, examined the bike and our cracked windshield, and determined the guy had been speeding down the hill on his bike and struck us without applying the brakes. They asked me what I saw, and the best that I could do was stammer that it happened so fast. I thought we had hit 2 people. We got a ride from a family member to my boyfriend's house, but I was still in such a state of shock that I couldn't even touch the dinner that had been prepared for us. People have since asked if the man who stood up was bloody or if I could see the whites of his eyes. Honestly, I don't recall seeing either. All I could say with certainty is that he stood up, held his right hand to his head, and limped away. He didn't react to my boyfriend stepping out of the car. I don't know if I believe in ghosts or life after death, but if that's the case, this man was physically reacting to the impact that had killed him, seeming not to have noticed that he was dead. Occasionally I dream about that night and that impact, but in the dream I never see the man stand back up. I see a bright flash of light and then nothing. No details of the man himself after the hit. I never even found out the man's name. It was the worst Christmas of my life.
That was a spirit.
Yeah, that was.
That was definitely a spirit, right? She's probably clairvoyant or something. She's seen the spirit. That's crazy. That was insane. Gosh, I don't even know what to say about that. Right? That was nuts. I was like a 9.
That was a 9.
I was definitely like a 9.
That was good.
No crazy moves done. It had my attention the whole time. I was like, oh yeah, that was a good one. That was a really, really good one.
The way he was built, laying on the floor.
Yeah. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Wait.
Let's get into it.
The best story my grandfather ever told me happened back when he was 18 years old on Christmas Eve in 1959. He was lying on his couch with a broken leg, which was perched on the arm of the couch, all wrapped up in a cast. He was listening to the radio and watching the snow fall outside as he used the poker to adjust the wood in the fire. It was about 8 p.m. and he was alone in the house. His family lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, and his father and brothers were across the property in the barn, roughly about a mile away. He doesn't recall where his mother was. He was reading something in the newspaper about President Eisenhower when there came a furious pounding at the door. An enraged voice screamed from the other side of the door that Owen, my great-grandfather, was going to die tonight.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
My grandfather didn't respond to this. Unable to move off the couch, he pulled the rug across the room until the shotgun which had been leaning against the fireplace was in reach, and he picked it up and cocked it, pointing it towards the front door. My grandfather says for the next 5 to 10 minutes, the man continued screaming, circling the house and pounding on windows, screaming for Owen to come out. He was clearly drunk and out of his mind and wasn't leaving the house until someone opened up. My grandfather winced as the man banged on the window right above the couch, but he still didn't move or acknowledge him. Finally, the man returned to the front door and pounded on it until he kicked it in. My grandfather said that he felt the blast of cold air and the stench of tobacco and whiskey as the man stomped through the dark hallway and walked right into the living room. He was a tall, lanky guy with brown teeth and an uneven gray beard, like he had only shaved part of his face. The guy's eyes were as big as hubcaps and he was barefoot, which was crazy as it was snowing outside. For about 10 seconds, the guy didn't even notice my grandfather, but was glancing around the room quickly, his eyes darting back and forth like a rat until his eyes fell upon the couch. He saw my grandfather, he saw the shotgun, and he froze like a deer in the headlights. My grandfather cocked the hammer back on one of the barrels. He had him dead to rights, and the intruder knew it. My grandfather snapped, "Get the fuck out!" The man took a step back, looking more enraged than afraid. "Where's Owen?" he hissed. "Get out!" my grandfather yelled. The guy turned around, walked into the kitchen, and dug through the pantry until he found a pint of whiskey. He even turned around and looked back into the living room just to make sure the shotgun was still up. He threw back the whiskey, dropped the bottle in the sink, and walked out, calling back over his shoulder, "Tell Owen I said Merry Christmas." Once the guy was outside, my grandfather heard him knock over the pile of firewood by the steps. After another minute, he smelled smoke and realized the guy had set fire to the pile, likely intending to burn the house down. My grandfather hobbled over awkwardly, shotgun still up, barely able to hold it straight on his bad leg, and peered outside. The guy was gone, but there was so much snow around the fire and so much icy wind assaulting it that the fire was already nearly out. When Owen and the others got back and saw the charred marks on the front stairs, they asked what happened, and my grandfather told them everything. Owen flew into a rage, took the shotgun, and followed the guy's tracks out across the fields with a lantern. He didn't come back until Christmas morning when the family was all gathered in the kitchen for breakfast. Owen tossed the gun down and hissed that the fucking thing hadn't even been loaded. When my grandfather asked if he got him, Owen nodded and responded, "Oh yes." And that was it. He never got my great-grandfather Owen to report exactly what happened or even know how he knew the man. My grandfather said that he never saw the stranger ever again. I asked him if he thought Owen had killed him, and he responded, "I'm almost positive that he did." When I asked, "But how did he do it with no ammo in the gun?" my grandfather looked back at me and said, "There's dozens of ways to kill a man with your hands."
Crazy cabin stories are always good. I think that's the weird part about living.
You were scared, huh? Don't be scared.
About living out in the forest. So kind of creepy. But that was a good story as well. Short, but I think good.
I would rate it like a 7.
I would rate it like
It was like funny, but also scary.
Oh! He needs some milk.
I would rate it like a 6 because it was short.
Go to the next and final one.
All right.
My wife and I don't live together. She had become abusive over the last few months, mostly towards our daughter. Our daughter is almost 18 months old and is my whole world. I am unemployed at the moment, but my mother had been helping me out a lot. Today at around 4 p.m. I took my daughter to the store. I usually do this around the time she wakes up from her nap. My daughter is a very active child and can't seem to sit still for more than 10 minutes without getting cranky. I usually let her walk with me, holding her hand and patiently walking at her pace. I usually get just a juice for her, but had to get some extra groceries that I was short on: flour, sugar, and some noodles. I also remembered we were low on milk and grabbed a gallon on our way back. With all that I was carrying, I wasn't able to hold her hand. I made sure to walk behind her, but that only makes her walk slowly. As we made our way to the register, I was continuously urging her to keep walking, which she would do, but only for a second before her attention would be drawn to another rickety box with whatever was on sale, or she would see something colorful on a lower shelf. I was getting a bit frustrated, but I wasn't showing it in my voice. I kept urging her to keep walking, and she kept getting sidetracked. With everything I was carrying, I started to wish I had grabbed a basket. At the front, their customer service desk holds Register 1, which was thankfully open. I want to take the time to mention that my daughter is very fond of saying hi and waving at everyone. I set everything up to get rung up, but the service attendant was busy with a return at the customer service area, so I had to wait. The entrance to the store is to my right. The only exit is behind the service desk, which leads into the small foyer before leading to the other doors. As people enter, they have to pass the customer service desk. I was being fatherly to my daughter, trying to entertain her with patty cake and the itsy bitsy spider while we waited for the cashier to check us out. My daughter would frequently wave at people passing and say hi in her squeaky toddler voice. Some people would smile and wave back, while others would stop to adore her. At this point, I'm used to people doing that. It makes me happy knowing my daughter isn't a shy, cranky little asshole like some of the kids you see in the stores like this. The lady was ready to check us out, and I told my daughter to hold my hand since I wouldn't be looking her way. I had to pull my wallet out to retrieve my debit card to pay for the groceries and let her hand go for a moment. I kept looking her way to make sure she wasn't wandering off. The lady went to hand me my receipt when all of a sudden she yelled at someone behind me. "What are you doing with his daughter?" She bellowed as I turned to look at a man who had picked her up and started running towards the entrance doors. I was shocked. The doors didn't open since they were a one-way set of doors, and the cashier quickly picked up the phone yelling that she was calling the police. I was stunned to the point of immobilization, but quickly realized what was going on. I have a pocket knife that I usually carry on me so I can break the seal on my daughter's juice. I quickly ran after the man as someone started to make their way through the entrance doors. He didn't get a chance to run through before I slammed my fist across his temple. I decided not to use the knife in case I might get in trouble. The man stumbled and I grabbed my daughter from his arms. He then proceeded to run out the door, empty-handed. The police arrived about 5 minutes later and asked me what I had seen. I explained that I hadn't seen the man's face, since he had shaggy long hair and a beard. He was also wearing a hoodie, which wasn't that much of a surprise. They took the statement of several witnesses, including the cashiers, and had already had their other officers searching the area. Someone had said the guy had ran behind the building, but the officers didn't find anyone. The police took us home and then asked more questions like, "Have you seen him before? Do you know anyone who looks like this man?" and then proceeded to ask about the home life. The CPS had been over earlier in the day to discuss my wife's mental health issues, and the police had been here earlier as well. The officer asked if we needed any groceries or anything else, and I told them no. The officers left, leaving me their cards in case I saw the guy around the area. About 20 minutes later, I got a knock at the door. To my surprise, the officers had returned with the largest box of pampered diapers I had ever seen, a large box of wipes, about 6 large Winko bags of groceries, and a couple of bags of toys. I fell to my knees and cried after they left us. I had spent almost 5 minutes choking back tears as I thanked them. They had left us with a Christmas card saying I was a strong father to have had so much go on recently, and that my daughter was lucky to have such a great father. There was $100 in the card too, wrapped in a note that said to get a drink or two if I needed it. I don't drink, so I will probably get some extra Christmas presents for my mom and daughter. So, to the fucker that tried to kidnap my daughter, I hope the police find you, and I hope we never meet again.
Shout out to MJV Animations. That was crazy. But also tell the parents, this is why you should grab a bag or something, because you don't want your kid running loose.
The basket.
Yeah, a basket.
But when you got a dad like me, I would have chased him down and hit him with that. That's it. All right, first episode, Freaky Friday. That's it. So,
stay scary. We out.
yeah.